Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Good morning. Good morning. I'm Steve. Hello, everyone. Have a beautiful morning. If you're in the mood to sing along this morning, the only people who are going to hear, if you're at all nervous about that, is you, the dog, the cat, maybe a a roommate, a housemate. And you know the words, so that's good. This is Shlomo's Nagun. Yai dai da dai dai da dai. Yai dai da dai dai da dai. Yai dai da dai dai da dai dai da dai dai. Yai dai da dai dai da 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 dai dai da dai dai. Yai dai da dai dai da dai. Yai dai dai dai. Yai dai da dai dai dai. Yai dai da dai dai dai. Yai dai da dai. Yai dai da dai. Yai dai da dai dai da dai. Yai dai da dai dai da dai. Yai dai da dai dai da dai dai da dai dai. Yai dai da dai dai da dai. Yai dai dai dai. Yai dai da dai dai dai. Yai dai da dai dai dai. Yai dai da dai. Yai dai da dai. Yai dai da dai dai da dai. Yai dai da dai dai da dai. Yai dai da dai dai da dai dai da dai dai. Yai dai da dai dai da dai.
Thank
Good
you,
morning.
Steve. Thank you, Steve. Good morning. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Here we are in our little squares, just celebrating a togetherness that transcends the distances, the physical distances of space and time, and just reminding us of something far deeper and something far more essential and something far more important. And on this morning, we label that which is so much far important, so far more important. We call it Shabbat. The interesting thing about Shabbat is that it's actually not quite defined in Torah. It's called rest, no work, and later tradition defines what work is. And what's interesting is that the work that's defined seems to focus on what we do in the outer world. And so there are all kinds of rules and regulations about the kinds of busyness and business that are to be prohibited on Shabbat. But I believe that the deeper nature of Shabbat is actually not to be measured in the acts that we do or don't do in the world. I think it's to be measured in the consciousness with which we open, with which we know ourselves, with which we remember ourselves, and from which we act in the world. I think in the ancient myth of creation, one of the guidelines is the very first creation in that myth is the emergence of light. And one of the fascinating things about the emergence of that mythic, the light in that mythic story is that that light emerges prior to the creation of the sun or the moon or the stars. Because that light is the light of consciousness. It's not really the light of a candle, even though we symbolize it that way. It's not the light of the sun, and it's not the light of the moon, and it's not the light of the stars. It's not even the light of a light bulb. It's the light, the enduring illumination of consciousness, which in fact illuminates everything. The consciousness that flows through us holds everything we experience. All perception, all thought, all feeling, all the objects in our experience are held in consciousness, but that consciousness is greater than and is not limited by anything it holds. So in the celebration of Shabbat, in the marking of Shabbat, the first thing that happens is the lighting of candles, the light, to remind us not of a sun or a moon or stars, but to remind us of that consciousness and to invite us to open to the fullness of that awareness and awakening within us. So on this Shabbat, particularly a Shabbat in which we are about to focus on the whole challenge of giving thanks at a very, very challenging time, entering into a Thanksgiving week that is unique in our experience in so many ways. This Shabbat invites us to open to that consciousness, that wholeness, that perfection, that peace, that joy, that love, that compassion, which is essentially the fullest nature of our identity. It's the who we are. And we are challenged to take a Shabbat moment and define it as what it is. Letting go of the constrictions, letting go of our tendency to identify ourselves with lesser aspects of ourselves, with our names, with our roles, with our seeking approval, with our self-criticisms, all that. Shabbat consciousness is a relief, a rest from that seemingly eternal struggle. So the words we share in song are Ma Yafeh Hayom, how beautiful the day, Shabbat Shalom. How beautiful the day, Shabbat Shalom, remembering that Shabbat is that enduring consciousness that we are, that wholeness, that fullness, that all rightness, that yesness. And shalom, the root meaning of the word shalom is wholeness and completeness. Shabbat Shalom. Ma Yafeh Hayom, Shabbat Shalom. We enter into the fullness, the perfection, the realness of Shabbat.
Ma Yafeh Hayom, Shabbat Shalom. Ma Yafeh Hayom, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. How beautiful the day. Shabbat Shalom. How beautiful the day. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Ma Yafeh Hayom. Shabbat Shalom. Ma Yafeh Hayom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. How beautiful the day. Shabbat Shalom. How beautiful the day. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Ma Yafeh Hayom. Shabbat Shalom. Maya Hayom, Shabbat Shalom. You know what? I think we're going to sing that one more time because it's what we do when behind the scenes Rabbi Ted disappears.
The computer crashed, but he'll be back.
Maya Hayom, Shabbat Shalom. Maya Hayom, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. How beautiful the day. Shabbat Shalom. How beautiful the day. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Maya Hayom. Shabbat Shalom. Maya Hayom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Maya Hayom. Shabbat Shalom. Maya Hayom. Shabbat Shalom.
Well, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I don't know how long you were singing that.
18 times. No, we went through it twice and you were back right on cue.
Wow.
Yeah.
I had a computer crash. So I had a reboot. It's one of those weekends. So here we are. I mean, what is fascinating to me is that it keeps reminding me that if we're looking for stability and absolute consistency in the world of conditions, we're actually going to be disappointed time and time again. My computer is still doing strange things, so I hope that it seems to be verifying some file. So I'm hoping that doesn't show on the screen that other people may be seeing. And here we are. Which just leads me, Steve, let me know if at any point you can't hear me or can't see me so that I can have some feedback on that.
Will do.
In my tradition, there are words to be spoken at the very beginning of every day. Before doing anything else, even before getting out of bed, there are words to be spoken, and the words to be spoken are words of thanksgiving. And it's fascinating because, in a way, the words of thanksgiving are to be offered before examining, okay, what's my schedule for the day? What's my to-do list? How am I feeling? Before any of the objective reality starts cascading in on us, we are to say, Modeh ani lefanecha. I give thanks in your presence. I am connected to a far more profound presence. That presence is not outside me, it's inside me. That presence is the essence of the who that I am. Modeh ani lefanecha, and we're going to be chanting it today as Modeh ani lefanecha ya chai v'kayam. I give thanks in your presence, eternal living one I am. Eternal living one I am. We begin the day with a profound remembering of the essential nature of our being, the essential nature of our identity, and the essential gift of awakening in a body. It's really allowing that consciousness to see through us, to hear through us, to touch through us, to taste through us, to smell through us. Yes, we then categorize and make value judgments about the various kinds of sights and the various kinds of sounds and the various kinds of touches and the various kinds of tastes and smells. But the mere fact of being able to allow that consciousness to see and to hear, just beyond the specifics, is some kind of outrageous privilege. Modeh, because Hebrew responds to either masculine or feminine, like Spanish, like many languages, everything is in a masculine or feminine tense. Men would say Modeh ani lefanecha, women would say Modah ani lefanecha. You see both written on the brief words of the chant that we're going to be sharing. And then it says Ya chai v'kayam. Ya, and we're going to be encountering Ya several times this morning. There's a sacred name of God, and many of you know that that sacred name is not pronounced. The sacred name, it's called the Tetragrammaton, which is a Greek word which means the four-letter name. That name consists of the four Hebrew letters Yod, He, Vav, He. And somewhere in the 2nd century before the Common Era, human consciousness had reached the point where there was a recognition that words and names draw a boundary around that which is named. Words divide, words separate. That's their function. Words allow us to manipulate, words allow us to communicate. What if you are describing that which has no boundaries? That which has, you can't draw a circle around it because there's no ending. In many ways, there's no beginning. It is the isness of it all. It is the being of it all. It is the presence of it all. It is the consciousness of it all. That presence, that whole presence, awakening within each and every one of us. There's no way to name it. So what was decided at that time is any time we would come up with the four letters in Torah or in a prayer text of Yod He Vav He, rather than trying to read it, we would substitute a whole other word. And the other word that was substituted for it was Adonai. So many of you know who grew up with the Shema, for instance, and you'll see that on the song sheet as well. The first rendition of the Shema has the word Adonai. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Adonai spoken instead of the word that can't be pronounced. But there's a problem, and the problem is that the word Adonai actually means Lord, and it's too small. So what starts happening in translations, and it's really the translation that I grew up with, it said, listen, Israel, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And that promoted, in whatever ways, the notion that this Adonai, this wholeness, is outside us, Lord somewhere, rather than directing us toward the essential nature of all being and the essential nature of our being. So increasingly, I've been feeling called to replace the word Adonai with the first syllable of the sacred name. We are given the first syllable. It appears in various places in the Hebrew Bible as Yah, and that's clear. So it's not violating, it's not a name, it's an opening. And there's something about that sound that just opens. Yah. Whether it's in the Shema to say, Shema Yisrael, Yah Eloheinu, Yah Echad. It's not Lord, a little contained object. It's the eternal subject, the Yah-ness of the universe. So we'll bring that in the first time in this chant. Moda'ani or Moda'ani lefanecha Yah chai v'kayam. I give thanks in your presence, eternal living one I am. Just imagining, and it's an invitation to perhaps make this part of your practice. The first time, opening your eyes in the morning and going, Modeh or Moda ani lefanecha Yah chai v'kayam. I strongly recommend the Hebrew, and if that's uncomfortable, to just go, I give thanks in your presence, eternal living one I am. What awakens is right here and right now. It's not something just outside. It is us awakening to the fullness of consciousness, to the fullness of possibility, to the fullness of potential, to bring that gratitude into our day. So this is also a new melody, and Steve will be doing it as a chant, and we invite you to join along and make this your own.
Moda'ani lefanecha Yah chai v'kayam. Moda'ani lefanecha Yah chai v'kayam. Moda'ani lefanecha. Moda'ani lefanecha. Moda'ani lefanecha Yah chai v'kayam. Moda'ani lefanecha Yah chai v'kayam. Moda'ani lefanecha. Moda'ani lefanecha. Moda'ani lefanecha Yah chai v'kayam. Moda'ani lefanecha Yah chai Vekayam Mode Ani Lefanecha Mode Ani Lefanecha Mode Ani Lefanecha Yachai Vekayam Mode Ani Lefanecha Yachai Vekayam Mode Ani Lefanecha Mode Ani Lefanecha Mode Ani Lefanecha Yachai Vekayam Mode Ani Lefanecha Yachai Vekayam Mode Ani Lefanecha Mode Ani Lefanecha.
Thank you, Steve.
Mm.
And I do hope, I mean, it is true, anybody who is with us on this live stream, we can't see you, we can't hear you. I think there's a chat that you're able to, from time to time, say, we're here, and share comments or greetings as you desire. But I hope that you just breathe that in. Modeh or Moda ani lefanecha yachai v'kayam. Many of you know that my experience and my own teaching has been deepening over these years with my association with a co-teacher, Tova Zev. And the transition from Adonai to Yah is really something that has come from that association, and just an awakening to an opening and a yearning to express that opening in clearer, more effective, and more real ways than ever before. It's really a spiritual journey that is, well, it's become more essential in the world that we are now living. The conditions, we keep thinking that we can shift conditions in the world and fix things out there without attending to the essential nature of the consciousness from which those very conditions have emerged. Conditions in the world and consciousness that supports them are linked. You just can't have one without the other. And to try to shift things out there without significantly shifting the consciousness, it just won't last. It'll just snap back at some point, so that we can again witness the nature of the consciousness that in fact is supporting. You know, it seems to me we live at a time when objective reality, the conditions in our world, just assail us and invite us to question, how at this time can we really truly celebrate Thanksgiving? How at this time can we truly celebrate giving thanks? Many of us are feeling the challenge and the loss of getting together with family and friends, of knowing that the usual things we do on Thanksgiving are actually fraught with danger, with not only danger to our own health, but bringing danger to those we care about the most. we live in a time when the coronavirus, COVID-19, has surged as many predicted it would, at a time when so many are like virus fatigued, and somehow identifying caution with control. And politicizing a process that really has to do with keeping each other healthy and keeping each other safe. So we are assailed with the numbers and the reality of what those numbers mean in terms of those impacted by this pandemic. And we are impacted by an expanding climate crisis. And I don't care what side of the political divide you might happen to be on, or any of us might happen to be on. The reality is there are choices being made that favor short-term economic gain as more important than the future survival of a planet, the future survival of humankind, the future survival of the biodiversity which allows human life to survive. There is no doubt that it is this strangling of the biodiversity which in fact has brought more severe viruses into contact with human beings. This is not a gift from some external source. This is one of the consequences of what we humans have done to our environment. And we as well are assailed at this time by clearly rampant racism. Racism and a kind of focus on nationalism, which is supporting the rise of anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, anti-immigrant, just dividing more and more. We're living at a time when we are assailed by a radically challenging disparity of income. There was a figure I saw recently that indicated that four-fifths of children in the Los Angeles school district, public school district, lived below the poverty level. Something is radically wrong. And the political strife that assails us in every headline, in every newscast, I don't care which side of the divide we might be on, each side is assailing the other, each side is claiming to be victim of the other. We live at a time where there are so many challenges, one might wonder, how can we give thanks at such a time as this? Without denying, without pretending? How do we really open to thanks when we can't get together with our loved ones and our families and celebrate as we may have been doing for decades, as we may have been looking forward to? How do we give thanks? As I look at this, I hear messages. It's almost like the universe has been trying to give us messages. I believe that there is a message in COVID-19, and the message is pretty clear. The message is, guess what, human beings? You're all connected. I don't care what boundaries of language or geography or culture. You're all human beings. And this virus is providing an opportunity to recognize that and to respond to that as a unified human family. I believe that the climate crisis as well, it affects all of us. It's like that old story of everybody on a boat and somebody drills a hole under their seat and the water starts coming up and people start complaining, and the person who drilled the hole says, no, it's just under my seat. And it becomes apparent that all of us are in the same boat. There is no other boat. The climate crisis is in fact impacting all of us. Some areas might now have more storms than others. Some areas have more fires than others. But the message has been clear as far as I can tell. It's, hey, folks, wake up. You're in this together. We cannot deal with this. We cannot solve this by fighting each other. We can only deal with this by uniting with each other. Racism, economic disparity, political strife. I believe the universe is striving to tell us that we are all connected and inviting us to learn how to remember that and to respond to each other and to our planet in ways that reflect that awareness of our connection, that awareness of this takes all of us. This is about all of us. We are human beings, and we are human beings together, and we might have all kinds of differing views, but we all want our children to be healthy. We actually don't want to do that which is bringing increased risk of severe viruses and more pandemics. We actually are not served by increasing racial violence in our cities. We are not served. We are not served by encouraging the abject poverty of such an incredibly large percentage of our population. We are not served. And we are not served by the radical polarization and political strife. We are not served by that which inhibits the capacity of us to govern ourselves in a cohesive, congruent way that can support the healing and the wholeness and the health of each and every one of us. I think the messages of this time keep ramping up to try to get us to realize how connected and interconnected we are. And the fact is, we've been listening in a way, but we keep thinking that our connection needs to be realized in the objective world. We think that our connection essentially has to be manifested in creating agreement out here in the conditional world. And the history of humankind has demonstrated that that actually doesn't work. There are those who would like us all to be of one religion. But any look, casual or otherwise, at the history of humankind indicates that It just doesn't work that way. Even if we start off by a common identity and a common agreement, a common ego identity and belief system, there'll be all kinds of fragmentation and all kinds of differences. It can't be avoided because ultimately the kind of connection we need, the kind of connection that needs to be, has to come from another direction. It's not just finding harmony in the conditions without finding harmony in the consciousness that has created the conditions. So we seek in the midst of the challenges of this time, not to deny them, but to hear them, not to bemoan them, but to learn from them, to seek to hear the messages that we are consistently getting, that we might awaken to the healing that needs to be, and begin to enter into perhaps the most meaningful thanksgiving, the most meaningful giving thanks that we have ever experienced. So Steve continues with, thank you for.
As you were speaking, Rabbi Ted, of how this all starts within us. I had an experience at work. I work in the healthcare industry, and I was going to put together a video of gratitude, of, what are people grateful for? And I invited people to come by my office, which is right on the main thoroughfare in our complex. And people didn't do it for like 4 or 5 days. I would mention it, hey, come by, and then I would go out and I would grab a couple of people. So I literally only interviewed about 3 out of 40. And it was dawning on me yesterday that, you know what? It fits perfectly with this, Rabbi Ted, that it's such a difficult time right now to get in touch with those things we're thankful for. But if we start with ourselves, and I thought I'll do that with myself, and I'll just, I'll tell people what I'm thankful for.
Great.
About them. So
great. Thank you. Thank you for that, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wrote this song out of gratitude, really trying to have a mantra to remind myself of all those things I'm grateful for. Thank you for your love and more, gifts untold, and shelter from the cold. When I'm feeling sad or lonely, you let me know I'm not the only one who's ever been here. Thank you for your gifts and more. That's what I thank you for. Through all my noise, you've given me the choice. And though I complain, sometimes about the cold rain, you pick me up so I can listen for a while to just the things that I've been missing in my life. Thank you for your gifts and more. That's what I thank you for. Thank you for. Thank you for. Thank you for. As I explore each new corridor, I've been rich and poor, stumbled through my share of doors. when I'm feeling sad or lonely. Well, you remind me of all the folks who've loved me in my life. Thank you for your gifts and more. That's what I thank you for. Oh, thank you for. Thank you for. Thank you for your gifts and more. That's what I thank you for.
And I thank you for that, Steve.
You're welcome.
It's really a pleasure and a privilege to be sharing these spiritual Saturdays with you.
Oh, thank you.
And I thank you. I think everything that's happening in this time, all the challenges that we are experiencing, and added to everything that I mentioned are the personal dramas, our life dramas that are not stopping simply because of all the other stuff that's happening in the world. I think we are all, each and every one of us, called to remember something crucial, something critical about ourselves. I think every time we fall into any kind of despair, any time we fall into hopelessness or helplessness, anytime we fall into fear, anytime we fall into depression and despair, we're called to remember. We're called to remember something about ourselves. I believe we're called to remember that we are actually not defined by the roles, names, expectations, judgments of our separate selves. We have this narrative mind that comments on everything, that seems to be always with us, but that narrative mind is actually not who we are. Who we are has a narrative mind. Who we are is bigger than a narrative mind, and who we are can utilize the amazing capacities of that narrative mind to navigate our world, expressing the greater fullness that we are behind, beyond, before that narrative mind, behind, beyond, before the physical body, behind, beyond, before the feelings. We are being called to remember something without which the healing that our planet needs, the healing that our people needs, the healing that our world needs cannot be achieved. We are called upon to heed the sharp, painful messages that we are receiving on so many painful fronts today and go, you're right, it's too much to handle out there. Every time we focus on one thing, another thing falls away. Every time we focus on that first thing falls away, because the essential consciousness of wholeness, of wellness, of peace, of compassion has been lacking. We have not been remembering the one we are. The words of the song, Yahu Ha-Elohim. Again, I put both versions up since many of you have sung it with me many times before as Adonai Hu Ha-Elohim. But we want to go bigger. We want to go more inclusive because this is a time when we must open more fully. We are not suggesting that there is a Lord somewhere out there that needs to take care of us, that rewards or punishes. That's just a misinterpretation. That's a mistranslation. It's a travesty of a spiritual awakening that needs to be heard, that needs to be acknowledged, that needs to be celebrated, and that needs to be expressed in our lives and in our world. So we focus on Yahu Ha-Elohim. Elohim is translated as God, but it's plural, but always translated singularly. Elohim is the one manifesting as the many. Yah is the absolute one. We are the Elohim. Yah lives within each and every one of us, expressing through our uniqueness, through the unique place from which we see and hear, taste and smell and touch, act, think, feel. We are the many manifestations of one. And although rationally we cannot understand that entirety of that one is our identity. That is who we are, right here, right now. Yahu Ha-Elohim. Yahu Ha-Elohim. 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 Hu Yah. The Eternal One expresses as the many. The many are eternally one. We need to practice a remembering. We need to practice an awakening. We need to practice opening to the one we are, that we might transcend the polarizations, the challenges of our objective reality of the outer world, and claim the compassion, the wisdom that we need to bring forth the healing that needs to be. So we practice our awakening, we practice our remembering, we practice reclaiming the essential nature of our being, the essential nature of all being. For such a time as this is where true thanksgiving needs to arise. This is where true giving thanks needs to awaken and be shared through every word, through every intention, through every act in our external world. Yahu Ha-Elohim, 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 Hu Yah. It's who we are. Remember with me.
Yahu Ha-Elohim. Yahu Ha-Elohim. Ha Elohim, Ha Elohim, Hu Yah. Yahu Ha Elohim, Yahu Ha Elohim, Ha Elohim, Ha Elohim, Hu Yah. Yahu Ha Elohim, Yahu Ha Elohim, Ha Elohim, Ha Elohim, Hu Yah. Yahu Ha Elohim, Yahu Ha Elohim, Ha Elohim, Ha Elohim, Hu Yah, Hu Yah.
It's like seeing beyond the outward appearances. It's like seeing beyond and behind the conditions. It's like seeing from a consciousness of wholeness. It's like seeing from a consciousness of connection. It's seeing, walking, talking, being from a consciousness of connection. Connection that is so far deeper than agreeing on political viewpoints or agreeing about how to deal with COVID or agreeing about anything. It's opening to a consciousness which in fact can support a deeper kind of agreement, a deeper kind of cooperation, a deeper kind of effective action in the world, restoring biodiversity, helping to protect our hospitals and medical workers and all of us who are so vulnerable to the ravages of this virus. Protecting those who are so wounded, really wounded by the ravages of racism, the pervasiveness of racism. Healing those whose identities have been so caught up in animosities and fears. Healing those who are so caught up in seeing themselves separate so that there's no caring for others. There's really no room for true compassion. Healing those who see the political structure so differently, where we can start to appreciate where the wisdom is in each position and understand our capacity to use our shared intelligence, insight in ways that are supportive of all humankind. I didn't mention specifically the ravages of the patriarchal system, which infect pretty much everything. But the consciousness that's required to heal that is the same consciousness that's required to heal all the challenges that are before us, all the threats. to remember who we are, to remember what's really happening here, and to know that adding more anger, adding more despair, adding more unhappiness to the system just adds more anger and adds more unhappiness and makes things worse. What needs to be added is a consciousness of wholeness that transcends all apparent separations, a consciousness of a oneness that holds it all in an expanding compassion. In a moment, we'll enter together into a meditation, because the truth is, words can only reach so far into our own consciousness. I never know whether the words I use are communicating as I wish they would. I never know exactly what's heard of them. But I know that that which needs to be remembered is true already within each and every one of us. It's not something that comes from my words. It's not something that comes from anybody's words. It's something we can point to. But that remembering, that oneness, that wholeness, that fullness of consciousness, of life, of being, of presence, that's already who we are. And it is our conditioned ego, our conditioned separate self, that has kind of taken on the task of defining us, rather than allowing all our faculties to serve that greater presence, that greater consciousness that we are. Before we enter into a meditation, I want to make some comments about the invitation for donations that support this program. We are able to do this because of the support you give. I received a very dear email this morning from someone in another state who comes to share Spiritual Saturdays and was having trouble with the donate button that was on the email that I had sent announcing this Saturday's event. And she wondered whether something could be sent, a check could be sent to a physical address. And I just want to emphasize that that is totally possible. And if anybody feels called to do that rather than donating online, Unity in Lynnwood, Unity in Lynnwood. Lynnwood has two N's, unityinlynnwood.org. The address is on the website. If you feel inclined, we'd sure appreciate any donations to be noted that they're supporting Spiritual Saturdays. It's an interesting thing about doing things online, and particularly doing things that are streaming. It's like when people came into the sanctuary, where normally, for now some years, I was doing Spiritual Saturdays, everybody was invited to make a contribution. And that actually did support our program. When seeing things streaming, it's really easy to just imagine that this doesn't require any support, that this just happens on its own. And this is one of the issues with this form of communication. But we are sharing with each other, and Just as Steve and I do everything we can to support your journey, we invite you allowing us to do this. So in many ways, we experience your support as feedback, and we appreciate it deeply. We are thankful for each and every one of you, without regard for how much you might contribute. Because without you, this program really has no meaning. So whether you're seeing this live on a Saturday morning or whether you are witnessing this program at some time that's more convenient for you, we welcome your participation. More than any donation, I would welcome your remembering. And as well, I'm grateful for all the ways in which you support this work. And I invite you now to settle back, settle in. If you feel comfortable, let your eyes close. Cameron, who is so ably handling the audio and visual, will be putting up next to my screen the words, because our meditation focuses on the words of the Shema. We'll be coming out of the meditation singing Shema Yisrael, Yah Eloheinu, Yah Echad. But for now, allow your eyes to close and simply be present for a moment, just as you are. Notice how it is to have a body. Remembering that this is your body. You have a body with all its sensations, with all its glories, with all its issues. You have a body, but you are so much more than that body. You are a consciousness that has a body. You are a consciousness that can utilize this body to express that consciousness in the world. You are a consciousness that has a body through which you can express caring, compassion, support, gentleness. And in this moment, becoming aware of the activities of your mind. Mind is such a fascinating gift. We look at our minds and we understand the narrative nature of our mind. The mind narrates thoughts, judgments, memories, imaginings. Yet being more aware of the mind allows us to realize that we are a fuller consciousness having a mind to use to interface with physical reality. Our mind allows us to know objective reality, the objective world. But the consciousness that utilizes the mind is not an object. Our essential identity is eternal subject. I am using this body. I am using this mind. And when I am aware of that, I am able to make fullest, most productive, most effective use of this mind. And when I am aware, I am able to make most effective use of this body. I have so many feelings. I'm a feeling being. Every sensation has a feeling attached. Every thought has a feeling attached. Some strong, some weak, some major, some minor. And my consciousness holds each feeling, but is not limited by it. I am so much more than my feelings. I am so much more than my body. I am so much more than my mind. And I take these moments of Shabbat to let myself remember. And to hear an ancient call that says, Shema, Shema, listen, listen. Behind the chatter of the mind, behind the sensations of the body, behind the feelings of the heart, beyond, before, beyond, behind, listen, listen. Shema Yisrael, listen, you who strive to know what's real, you who strive to know the presence within you, you who strive to know God, you who strive to remember the I am awakening within each and every one of us. Listen. Listen, you who strive to remember. Absolute eternal being awakens within me as I am, behind any conditions, behind any separate identity. I am. Listen. I am. Listen to the I am awakening as you. In that I am, there is oneness. In that I am, there is infinite connection. In that I am is the interconnectedness of all being. Shema Yisrael, Yah Eloheinu, Yah Echad. Within each and every one of us, that Yah, that opening, that fullness, that presence, that oneness. Yah, I am. Yah, I am. Shema Yisrael. It's all of us. Listen. Yah Eloheinu. Yah awakens as us. Yah is one. Listen, you who strive for truth, you who strive for presence, you who strive to know the who you are, you who strive to know the who I am. The eternal awakens within as I am. The eternal is always one. Shema. Listen. And as you hear the song, allow the words to flow through you. Move from the quiet of a moment of meditation to express the remembering with these ancient, absolutely new words.
Shema Yisrael, Yah Eloheinu, Yah Echad. 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 Shema Yisrael, Yah Eloheinu, Yah Echad.
Thank you, Steve. Echad. It's all one. Giving thanks springs from the reality of the one we are. Giving thanks is so beyond our judgments about specific conditions. Giving thanks is an awakening to the world we are, to the world we yearn to manifest. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, everybody who has joined us this morning and joins us whenever you see this video. We wish you at this time of Thanksgiving, at this time of giving thanks, a deep remembering of the one you are, because that one knows the true depth of thanksgiving. That one brings thanksgiving into every table, every household, every neighborhood, every tradition, every city, every state, every country. We have an opportunity this year to celebrate a deeper giving thanks than ever before. We have the opportunity to respond to the call of the conditions in our world to remember and to celebrate. Thank you, folks. Shabbat Shalom. Enjoy the day. Enjoy the week. May your Thanksgiving be real and be filled with joy. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.